2019 campaign trail has been heated and full of color. The catchy dances, the quick-witted banter, and even the ugly scenes. But there's been one distinct trait that all the campaigns have shared. The podium has been a reflection of the reality that women in politics face. Men have dominated most of these campaigns, and the women's visibility at the podium has been pale in comparison. But why is it so difficult for Kenyan women to flourish in politics? And why is Kenya, one of Africa's most dynamic democracies, still lagging behind in the empowerment of women? Tucked deep in Mbita constituency, women have gathered. Millie Odhiambo, the current MP, is seeking re-election after her first stint in an elective position. She's going against a man, and her strategy is to win the women's hearts first.
Some of us problem was that you have people who didn't want me to come into politics. People who perhaps would have preferred other candidates, like the incumbent was not very keen with my candidature. He didn't want me to come. And you cannot underrate the power of incumbency. He has his own network of people who he could persuade. But people, which actually in itself was a paradox, because I came into politics supporting him. But the moment I was getting into elective politics, he opposed me. So those are some of the things that you learn to deal with in politics. And then, of course, some minority voices who thought I shouldn't be vying as a migogo. Migogo basically means I'm not a wife in this area. I'm a daughter. And as a daughter, some people feel uncomfortable because we are more of a patriarchal society. They would prefer if it is a son or a wife of the son who vies, not a daughter. A daughter is a migogo, and a migogo is a foreigner, traditionally. But sometimes you have to break the cultural barriers and norms.
But she is no ordinary leader. Millie has been among the most vocal MPs these past 5 years.
I direct.
And sometimes, being vocal leads to being controversial.
Today, I said I have dedicated this day to tell Uhuru every negative thing I want to tell him. Because some of us fought in this country for freedoms and democracy when Uhuru was busy enjoying himself out of the country as the son of the president and nyef. He cannot come and take the freedoms that people like Muruli died for. That I come into parliament as an elected member of parliament, naambiwa tembea. My boss in parliament is the speaker. We have 3 arms of parliament, of government: the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. I do not see what the executive arm is doing around me. I have no business with the executive. Uhuru is a fake president. Let him pack, prepare Arudi, Gatundi, P.O. Box Gatundu. He should stop harassing Kenyans. He has failed to even sort his own backyard, Gatundu. People are poor. I have seen his own community suffering. And
what made you do that? Was it like out of real anger, or was that like politics?
No, that's not politics. I was angry. I was angry because I think this country, we have fought for democracy. We have fought for democracy. Many people were killed in the process. Personally, I was beaten. I was young. I got into, the civil movement at about that time. We were beaten. I saw many of my friends across the ethnic divide who were killed. There was a guy who was from Central who was killed. There was a guy, Muruli, who was killed in Western. So people lost their lives trying to seek a change. And I don't think it is right for somebody to come as a Johnny come lately to take away that from people. You can take anything, but do not try and joke with our freedoms. Yeah. Now, if you touch something like that, I get annoyed. I do get annoyed, yes. And that is speaking, I always tell people from a Christian perspective, it's my Hosea moment. And Hosea is like when God asked Hosea to go and marry a prostitute, and guys were like, hey, why are you doing that? So there are times in your life you must have an Hosea moment when you do what people think is wrong, but it's okay.
Kwa ile kitu alikuwa na fight, alikuwa anatafuta ile kitu alikuwa anatafuta ile. Ilimbidi afanye hivyo, ndivyo watu waone mama anajaribu sana hata kushinda wanaume, kwa sababu mwanamume angefanya ile kama si angekuwa mwanamke ile. Ndiye akajaribu kabisa. Hata kama ilikuwa ni makosa kumtusi president, lakini alikuwa anatafuta haki, ile haki.
Mtu akikasirika sana, kitu ikikosirisha sana, utafanya chochote kile ili watu wajue kwamba kile wanachofanya si vyema. Inatakikana kila mtu azungumzie na mwili wake na roho yake yote. Ndivyo sababu Mili alikuwa akivua nguo zake, kwa sababu anataka haki ya mwanamke, haki ya mtoto, haki ya mtu yule yeyote ile, ili asikizwe. Kama hiyo peke yake ndio inaweza kuwa njia ya kusikizwa, basi mimi nasema alifanya haki. Kwa sababu amesikizwa na yale imefanya akasikizwa, na yale aliyotaka irekebishwe yakarekebika.
Back in Bita, however, the woman who dared insult the president is a hero of sorts. And today, she's using her most controversial moments to her advantage, even the moments that some would deem embarrassing.
We disagreed on the Security Laws Amendment Bill. And when we disagreed, and there was a bit of pandemonium in Parliament. So what we did as the opposition is because we didn't want the government side using tyranny of numbers to pass an unfavorable law. So we used a technique that is very common in even other parliaments. In the US, they did a sit-in. So in Kenya, instead of using a sit-in, we did more a small picketing. So we were picketing in, singing and all that. And in the process, these guys just came and started beating us up. And they beat us up seriously. I was beaten. I was actually admitted for 3 days. I was in hospital for 3 days because I was hit on my left nervous system. It actually gives me a problem to date. And I was undressed. Some two guys were pulling up my dress as one was pulling my panty. So to date, I have a torn panty. But I have, fortunately, even before I joined politics, I was a chairperson on Coalition on Violence Against Women. So I understand the power circle of men. And I've dealt with what we call the power wheel. And the power wheel, it's usually about men having control when they're dealing with sexual violence, about trying to get control. And what I do as a woman is I take back the power from you. And that's what I did. When you undress me, it's because you are trying to embarrass me. And what I told the Moses couriers and the rest is that I cannot be embarrassed about my nudity. So what I did is I unfinished for them. Well, I finished for them. You want to see my nakedness? See it. Then we can talk about healthcare. If you think I have something weird than your wife, you can see it so that we can deal with it already. Everything your wife has, I have. It's nothing weird. I do not have rocks and stones where you think there should be. So once we are through with that, now we can deal with serious issues like health, like environment, like education, once you deal with the mystery around my sexuality. So I'm not fearful about talking about my sexuality, and I am not fearful about exposing my sexuality for a good cause. And fortunately for me, I also come from a society that people don't care about nudity. So it's okay, I'm home. There's a level of decorum to some degree, but nudity is not the hugest thing that you tell me, oh, we saw a woman naked, big deal. We all shower in the lake. Women, we see each other naked. The men, when they are passing, we get only partially in water, but they see your boobs and everything else. It's not a big deal here.
I get very sad when a girl comes in my office, she's 18, she's a man.
In the neighboring county's backyard, however, a newcomer to the political scene is not having it as easy.
She's 18, she's a mother of 4, she has been beaten by her husband.
Mary Makoha has been a community social worker working with survivors of rape and gender-based violence in Busia County. And now she wants to work in Parliament. But politics has not been a walk in the park for Mary. She lost the ODM nomination ticket for Butula's parliamentary seat, prompting her to vie as an independent candidate.
I've protected vulnerable communities. I was the first one to come and talk about HIV in this community. I have, together with the World Food Program, I have fed this community for 9 years. You know, at a time where children were left alone, people were very sick. I fed this community with aid from World Food Program for 9 years. And all this time, people told me, Mary, you're doing a good job. Mary, you're doing a good job. Mary, we are so proud of you. Until I declared I want to go into politics. And at first it was like, okay, go for woman rep. And I said, no, I don't want to go for woman rep. I want to go for member of parliament. And I was asked, why? Women, you have your seat. Why do you want to go for the male seat? And I was like, is it really a male seat? I mean, are there seats for men and for women? Yeah, and that's where my problems started.
But as soon as Mary declared her political ambitions, a violent resistance against her followed.
I've been threatened with death. And I remember one guy who works in KRA, because one of the aspirants was a senior person in KRA, so he employed several people. And this guy sent me a message telling me, like, you Makende, tutakunyoa, kumbafu wewe. You know, it is like, this seat is for men. So if I feel like I have those things, then they are going to cut them off. They are going to shave them off. The same guy also sent somebody to come and tell me that by the time they'll be counting votes, I'll have been buried. I reported that even to KRA, but of course people are protected. Yeah, KRA people came here, their integrity office. I wrote a statement, but it stopped at that level. And the same guy was even bragging, like, what could you do? You know, mzee amemaliza hiyo maneno. Mzee being one of my opponents now.
Mary shows us screenshots sent to her by a close relative who was part of a political group on the social platform WhatsApp. It shows a discussion by some of the members plotting to derail her campaigns by raping her.
Like when somebody sends you a message telling you that they are going to rape you and kill you, don't take it for granted. When somebody goes to send somebody to come and tell you that by the time they will be counting the votes, you will be buried, you don't take that for granted. Yes, sometimes I feel threatened. So what do you do? I have set up also a security team around me. Just for example, on the day of nomination, somebody had sent me a message telling me, if you step to Buhuma polling station, you will be killed. You know, and I was also aware that my opponent had set 4 boys, 4 goons in each polling station to harass me. I also had to look for people to protect me. I had to look for bouncers to protect me, and they did a good job.
Such extremes have seen less women be daring enough to get into politics. In 2013, a total 12,776 contenders vied for different political positions. In 2017, that number has shot up to 16,259. But the number of women went down. For the 47 county woman representative seats, only 206 women are contesting in this election, compared to 303 candidates in 2013. Even the constitutional gender requirement appears to not have been successful in closing the gap.
The spirit of it is more important, i.e. it was meant to just uplift us, give us a head start to ensuring that we have numbers that are palatable to our eyes. But yes, I do agree that the narrative now at the base, i.e. in the community, has been that women leaders should stick to women's rep and stick to women's issues. Which brings back us to the issue of around, I don't think, again, women have monopoly over women's issues. There's nothing wrong with a male leader putting forward a bill on breastfeeding, for example. And for Flavia, one day when I'm in Parliament, put forward a bill on security or terrorism or maritime issues, whatever it is that is considered a male kind of area. So I think we have to work on ourselves and stop limiting ourselves, because when you limit that narrative that way, it means that even when women get into leadership, then even in parliament and in the Senate, they'll be limited to those kinds of conversations, women's issues. No.
Even with all these challenges, however, it's still easier for today's woman to enter politics than it was previously. Few understand what it took for women in past decades to make it in the male-dominated boardrooms of cabinet and the testosterone-filled parliament.
The hardest moments are, you're talking about gender issues. People are bringing in issues of sexuality as though sexuality is a matter for women only. They'll be talking about how women dress, how this and that. You wouldn't think they were born of women. You wouldn't think they're brothers to sisters, they're fathers, they're all that. Those are the hardest moments. Having to try and calm yourself down and remind these people the family context. Because even the worst of men who bash women on issues of gender, you will find the soft side of such characters when you put them within a family situation. They'll fight tooth and nail for their daughters, for their mothers, for their sisters. Perhaps not as hard for their wives, but they'll fight nevertheless within the family context. So you remind men the family side, and they change, and they'll support. So the hardest thing is to keep calm against a person who is running roughshod or havoc, maintaining your cool to be able to explain where we are coming from, but it does work.
The firebrands of politics like Martha Karua helped to define how the future would be for women leaders. Her strong-willed approach made her stand out and challenge the gender stereotyping in politics. Like the time she was daring enough to walk out of a president who ruled Kenya with an iron fist.
I went to meet Moi. He was my president, although I was in the opposition. I needed to give him that respect and to receive and welcome him the way we welcome guests as Africans. And it went very well until he allowed his then KANU chairman to disparage my party, DP then, and my leader, the former president, Mwai Kibaki. That's an insult to me as a DP stalwart sitting in the meeting. So I told him, look, if you can't stop your chairman, you gotta give me time to defend my party, my chairman. And he was kind of like reluctant. He wanted me to tell him what I was going to say. And I told him I wouldn't tell him what I'm going to say. I mean, that's like making me a nursery school child. I've got to in advance be censored. But I promised him I would give him his due respect as a head of state. And I think he decided he'll not. I could see his body language. He'll not give me the chance. So I had to quickly think of what to do. I didn't want to walk out of his party chairman. I was higher than his party chairman. I'm an elected member. I timed him. And I knew I couldn't walk behind him because I'll look like I'm attacking the president. So I checked for an entrance. It was Kirugoya Stadium. There's a side route, and when he was walking to the podium, I walked through the other entrance, and I went in front of him, gave him a DP salute, and walked off. There's no law that obliges me to listen to a president, but the law is very clear. I cannot create a disturbance at his meeting. So I walked out in silence, went ahead of him, gave him a DP salute, and walked off. Those are totally permissible within the law. And that drama helped open barriers for opposition politicians. From Kirinyaga, the same day he went to Meru, he made sure he allowed Kiraito Murungi and the late David Moiraria to address the meeting. He didn't want other opposition people walking out on him. From that day forward, opposition members of parliament were recognized wherever the president won. So I braved it and opened doors for us in opposition that time.
it's me, the politician. So I try to keep them off my politics because he's a Muslim.
It's dawn in Nairobi, and Rachel Shebesh is working on her final push to retain her seat as woman representative. It's the final days before the election, and the campaign has been draining. But even with her busy schedule, she must make time for family, and that means early mornings.
Here's your tea. The one I remember critically is Lina J.B. Kilimo. Remember at that time she was a cabinet minister. So when I went and told her, I want you to mentor me, my name is Rachel Shebesh, ABCD. She said, you know, I've never seen a woman who just comes into the office and talks to me. And I said, well, I mapped out 4 or 5 women, and I thought you were one of the people I'd like to speak to. So she asked me, what are you doing tomorrow? And I said, anything you want me to do? So she says, come to the airport at a certain time. And Lina took me in her chopper. At that time, we were going to the funeral, I think, of Kijana Wamalwa. But all through the chopper, even as we landed, she kept telling me the do's and don'ts. And I will never forget when she said, always carry a leso in your car. As a female politician, we have another bag of clothes in our car all the time, because at any situation can arrive. Not only because you enter a place where you think your jeans are not appropriate, and you tie your leso.
While cultural practices and economic marginalization makes it harder for women in rural areas to succeed in politics, the dynamics are not too different in the cities.
I think my lowest moment probably was the Kidero slap, because it happened and people turned it against me. And that's when I realized what violence against women means.
When the Nairobi governor slapped Rachel Shebesh during a heated impasse on striking county workers, the public's attention was instead focused on whether or not Shebesh deserved the slap.
I couldn't believe he could dare. Okay? Then came some feeling of guilt, like you are the problem. This is actually what women go through. You feel like, oh, did I do something wrong, you know? And then after that comes humiliation. And then after humiliation comes some thinking of, well, you know what? Maybe I wasn't cut out for this thing. And then depression. So I went through all the stages, including depression. And I always say, if I didn't have a strong family around me, I wouldn't have made it. And if I didn't have a strong faith, because women in leadership must remember their faith. It's the only thing sometimes that keeps you going. If you have no spiritual connection, you could get lost. In fact, you most likely will get lost.
Oh, the slapping was so loud. It made me feel the vulture. I was hoping for the worst. I just wanted to slap back.
Satirical pieces displayed the imbalance of power between men and women in the Kenyan society. Shebesh was the weakling, and the governor was the powerful figure.
Kidero just slapped me.
Sina memoria kukuslap, I'm a dog, so madawa singu mukuswalo.
Those women are victims. You see? There's no way Rachel could foresee that a whole governor, a public official, would slap her because she is trying to get into his office to explain something, and she's elected. So that situation, Rachel is the victim. She has nothing to do with the improper conduct of Governor Kidero. And it's a pity that he wasn't taken through the motion. We are still calling him governor, having slapped a woman, because he insulted every woman, including his wife, by slapping Rachel.
To what extent have we also socialized women to be fighters? So if you have a daughter, to what extent are you bringing her up as a fighter? It doesn't need to be physical fighting. But so how do we balance those narratives in the sense that on one hand we're saying we're entering a male-dominated territory, come in and fight. On the other hand, you're not giving me the tools to fight, because fighting to me means I need to have resources, I need to have a voice, I need to be able to campaign door to door without fearing that I will be attacked. I need to be able to come up on a podium in a public forum without the fear that how am I dressed, how they look at me, will they throw stones, will they threaten my sexuality or things like that. So if we want women to come in there and fight, then I think we also need to resource women and give them the tools right from childhood to be able to do that. And we also need to change how we do politics. It doesn't need to be aggressive and physical and violent and vulgar.
Such experiences reveal the world of sexism, harassment, and even violence that politics presents to women. But the irony lies in how fellow women respond when one of them is under attack.
That day of the security bill where there was a fight, we tried as much as possible to keep off it, because men were literally exchanging blows. But as I've told you, Millie comes together with the men. So I heard about that story afterwards, and she even told it to me, and I was literally, what can I say, appalled by what she was telling me happened. At a point, I didn't know whether to believe her or not to believe her. But when she started going on TV to say it happened, then I was kind of thinking, I don't know, we could be giving mixed signals. I can't imagine that happened, but if it did, really somebody should even have been brought to book. We should have called the disciplinary committee, which is one of our committees that can mete out some discipline. I know when we talk about women, people love talking about things like those, and it excites them, such a topic.
I would not lay the blame on them. I would tell our men, it's an act of cowardice to just use brute force to violate women when it is a game of argument, which idea is greater than the other. Market your idea, defend your position, don't turn to violence.
When we do get to those positions, you know, it's like for me to get to the same position, I'll run a mile, my male counterpart will run half a mile. Like we have to prove ourselves double than our male counterparts, which is the unfortunate reality of society. So I think first it's an unfair question around the quality of leadership of women, and I insist on the issue around looking at women as individuals. You first look at me as an individual before you see the woman in me. So when you're putting me to account, be it integrity, the quality of the legislation, etc., you should come to me as Flavia, as a woman leader, as an individual, before you look at the tag women and then put us all over the basket that we have not done anything. And then secondly, I don't think it's true that the quality of, that they're doing badly, all of them. I think also we also have to we have to clarify on the public record and really go and analyze and assess what has been the performance of the leaders.
Kivumbi 2017, for all your election coverage.